Okay. Yeah. So this is the name of the presentation, Drupal and Internet of Things. And yeah, that is the name of this event, as you can see. And Erik is my name. It's there. And I work at Numedia. That is my Twitter name. If you want to compliment me on imagery on this presentation, or comment on the bad soldering of my electronics, or something else. Okay, so who is Erik? That's me. I'm a developer at Numedia, and I'm a kind of a bear nerd, but not a bear snob. I just want to point that out. And also, I'm not very good at soldering, but luckily for me, no one is sitting really close, so you can't really see it, basically. So, just gonna have to take my word for it. So, Internet of Things is the topic we'll be talking about. So, I copy-pasted something from Wikipedia, which is what you do in these sort of situations. It explains it's the network of physical objects or things embedded with electronic software, sensors, and network connectivity, which enables these objects to collect and exchange data. And basically, it's very popular to use things like this, a Raspberry Pi that I have here, or other DIY electronics. Or you could also say that like mobile phones or cars with interconnectivity is also Internet of Things, because it's physical objects in the physical world that interacts with the digital world. And so since a lot of us here are developers, I have some bad news. We will be talking about the physical world, which are out of our comfort zone, but don't worry, we'll also talk about the digital world. So just reassuring you that. So what we'll cover in this session, communication patterns and flow between these things and a Drupal site, and authentication and security strategies and patterns for this. And I think this is either an illustration of the first or the second, but I'm not sure. You can decide for yourself. Also, we'll cover, of course, animated GIFs, blinking LEDs, cats and dogs, and animated GIFs of blinking LEDs and cats and dogs. And I just want to point out we have already covered GIFs of blinking LEDs, so yeah, have that off the list. So what we will not cover is this, because I've seen people are doing this as well. You have a Raspberry Pi, and this can run like PHP, Apache, and stuff like that. You can install Drupal on it if you want. And then you can attach some wires, enable the PHP module, create a node with PHP, which executes some code based on the get parameter, and write a file with XX sudo, and a LED starts blinking. And that's, it's Internet of Things and Drupal, very cool. But, it has some problems. Well, actually, a more relevant example would be like, install Drupal on your Raspberry Pi, create a node with a PHP filter that reads like from a file to get the temperature in your living room, so that you can watch this from your office. And while this is, of course, very cool, you can watch the temperature from your office, you would, first of all, do all of these things, and second of all, you would have your Raspberry Pi available over the internet within your home Wi-Fi network. And yeah, okay, so we will not cover that, just saying. So when I was doing this presentation, I was considering this because, demoing this would be really cool. So I was considering the pros and cons. Here are an exhaustive list of pros, and here's an exhaustive list of cons. So I was weighing this against each other. I also saw this tweet illustrating live coding demos. I won't be doing any live coding, but demos at least. So I did, a calculated, weighing all of these things together, I did a calculated risk of doing demo, so let's start. The first demo, which is the one that could most possibly go wrong, it's actually with batteries. I have this thing, it's called an ESP8266. There's some LEDs attached to it, it's green and red. And we will see if this works now. That would be cool. Can I just also point out that I was bringing this on a plane and I was not arrested for a terrorist? I mean, it looks like a bomb.
You were white enough.
I don't know if you can see, but right now, maybe if I do it like this. Oh no, it stopped working.
No, it's Norway. The security guard would have been like, oh, don't blow us up.
Is it even visible? The green light? It's not? Okay, maybe if I just tip it over a little bit, like this. Can you see it now? Yeah. There it's red.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, and I also have this site. It's also live, of course, on the internet.
Is it going to blow up? Or
We'll see. I mean, according to that GIF, it might. I don't know. So I also have this site. It's on the internet, so you can just try to hack into it while I present if you want, or just, you know, watch that I actually do this live. So it's a Drupal 8 site, as you might notice. And so now we'll see what happens if I toggle the maintenance mode on this site. Oh, it turned red. That's cool. And then if I turn it back off, oh, it turned green. One demo, yay! Okay. That it's not the most fancy thing I'll do. So it's not a very smart thing, this one. It goes to a Drupal site and checks if it's online, really. It's just, is it status code 200? Okay, show a green light. And if not, show a red LED, and then, you know, toggle that. And it has, basically it has nothing to do with Drupal, really. You can do this, you know, against google.com, and you can check if Google is online. So this is just, okay, we're starting there. This is the hello world, right? It's the Internet of Things and Drupal. So, and as I was mentioning, I'm going to mention authentication. So this one doesn't use authentication at all, because it's just querying the front page, is it online? I mean, you don't have to be authenticated to check that, because it's like public info. Anyone can go to the front page and see if it's online. And second demo, I have this remote control. This is the remote control of my TV at home. So I'm going to do this. I also have this. This is a microcontroller called Tessel. And it has these modules you can plug in. Among them, infrared receiver. So we'll see what happens to that LED if I press my remote. It's red. You can see here. Relax. So we can see it was actually toggled maintenance mode on it, and I can turn it back on also. Or not. Come on, man. Maybe it crashed. Sorry about that. We can turn it on manually and just move on, because if I'll get stuck into that kind of things, it's not fun. Okay, so I have another slide for that. What happens here? It's this microcontroller that receives a signal. It's an infrared signal. And I program it to recognize the on-off button, so that the only thing it reacts to is the on-off button. And if it recognizes that, it requests a very specific route on the Drupal side that toggles the maintenance mode. And obviously, as you might understand, this is not something that we want exposed, or we don't even want it exposed like this, but you know, this is an example. But since I have it exposed, I want to have it behind some form of authentication, so that just not anyone can just go there and toggle it. So this first method, or like theory, you can use to authenticate your things is just using the user session of like the browser, because like in this context I have a session cookie. We can see briefly here, very briefly, so you don't hack it. This one, and that makes me user 1. And if I request a path using that same header with that cookie, of course I'm going to be authenticated as user 1, even though the thing I'm using is, you know, this thing. And so I have this last point just because we will expand on it later. It's kind of headless in the way that I have exposed some sort of functionality that usually has a UI, but I am using it via an API doing HTTP API for triggering it. So there's some pros and cons about this. And the biggest pro is easy to set up because if you just want to do a quick demo, then it's really easy. And if you want to expose this, you want to have it behind authentication. And it uses the same permission system as a regular frontend. So when I was creating this custom module that exposes this route, I could just set the permission that I wanted to use. And cons, the list is a bit longer. This is not persistent, so that if I log out of the browser session where I kind of took the cookie from, then that would log out this microcontroller as well. That is inconvenient. And it's also not persistent in the way that, if you want this running for weeks or something, it might expire depending on your server settings. Might even expire if you use like an in-memory cache. You can even expire it by doing a reboot or something. And the biggest problem is probably if the session gets compromised, especially if you use like user 1, then you're actually compromising your user because another one can just log in as that person. If you're like a hacker, you would probably do that. So you're not just compromising this endpoint used to toggle the maintenance mode, but you're actually compromising the user. And of course, you have to use HTTPS because otherwise it's really easy to sniff these sessions and you can get hacked. Oh man, it went offline again. Okay, so I'm gonna do a third demo. Luckily, as you can see, I have a video demo link for everything if it goes horribly wrong, which it seems like it's doing. Whoops. Anyway, I'm not going to use that right now. As you might have seen, I have a counter down here. And the reason for that is because I have only so many USB ports and so many things and so many wires to do in this time. So this could have been a thing, but I'm just illustrating it by having a browser window with it almost seems like a 7-segment display. So what this is going to do is going to count the number of nodes on our front page. And it's going to be, so we're just going to see that real quick. So if I add content here now to the front page, see that counter was incremented. And this could, of course, also be a thing. That's why I'm just showing it like this. But let's also see what happens if I, for example, still have this node, but I unpublish it. You see that it disappeared from the counter. It's no longer 1 but 0. And also, again, not promote it to the front page and publish it, which makes it not part of the front page view. And then again, back to, for example, publish it to the front page. And you can see the counter gets incremented again. So what happens here? Drupal saves a node, and I have this module that implements a node save when it publishes a key in Redis. And this Redis key this counter is communicating with a Node.js server. They have a communication open, and this Node.js server is listening for that key. So when Drupal saves a node, it just pushes information out, and some server is finding it, and then it tells this browser window something happened. Can you go check on the front page how many nodes there are? And then it queries the REST version. That's like the core module REST that you can expose all views as, and just counts the number of nodes. And this window is, you can see it's in incognito mode. So if I go to the site, I'm not logged in here. So that's why it doesn't actually see the unpublished node, because it doesn't have access to it. So it reflects the front page view, but via JSON. So it's both decoupled and headless because I'm moving logic or event logic out to another server, then using the headless version of the front page view to do the displaying here. Instead of, like, for example, I could query the front page over and over again, all the way until something new had happened. But instead I moved the listening logic out. Okay, fourth demo. So I have this Raspberry Pi that's here, and it has a sensor attached to it. And let's see if it goes well now. Let's look at the counter, see if anything happens. Hopefully it does. Oh yeah, something happened. And we can go here, look at the front page, and apparently it's 22 degrees in here right now. So we know that. So what happens here? What happens here is the Raspberry Pi senses temperature, and every 3 minutes and on start it sends the temperature to an endpoint using an API key. And this is the second authentication pattern I want to talk about. And also I want to point out that it does this every 3 minutes. So if you see the counter increment in like 3 minutes, it's just that, and not demo go wrong. Hopefully not. So the API keys for this is per user, and if they are valid, Drupal site permits the posting of the node. So let's talk about using this as an authentication strategy. The pros are, if a key is compromised, then it only gives access to that specific thing that the API key gives access to, and not the whole permission system like with the user one session thing. And keys can be regenerated system-wide and per user, at least in this implementation. And they can be persistent forever or for as long as I want. And they have no relation to user sessions, so when I log out, I don't log out the API keys. And there's some cons to this also. This particular use case is something that I wrote, so it's like, yeah, it's this random dude just wrote an API key module. So it would be really nice if you could, this could also be something that you had in core, or like be more battle tested than me hacking something together. And it still can be sniffed over plain HTTP, so use HTTPS, of course. Also, it would be really interesting to have API keys as an authentication strategy for the core REST module. Haven't looked into that, but that would be really cool. Okay, now if this works. Okay. What could possibly go wrong? So, we'll see what happens if I've done something very specific here, and we'll see what happens if I add a new node. What did it say? It was a demo? Yeah, right. So if I add a new node of a picture of a dog, and of course I need to add the picture. Super important.
Maybe
My
you should
folder
make the
dogs.
title- Maybe you should make the title say a picture of a cat, just so we know that it's actually the picture. That is triggering, and not the title.
I don't think I will.
I exposed the secret.
Okay, so what happens now? You can see that it turned red. Oh yeah. So we just toggled maintenance mode by posting a picture of a dog.
Well, it was true. He did post a picture of a dog.
I did do that, and you don't actually have to post a new one. You can actually just edit. That's just what it uses. So hopefully this will bring it back online. Yeah, it's back online. So what happens here? Arduino super speed processor. There's a GIF frame by frame analysis, recognizes the subject of the dog with the motion, sends a nuke laser command, and destroys the server farm, is what happened. Or not. I just really wanted to use that GIF, I'm sorry. So this is using the same decoupled Node.js backend and receives the node title as a key. And it finds the word dog, as so cleverly pointed out. And when a dog is found in the title, I have an IR transmitter connected to it, so it transmits by coincidence the same IR code, IR signal that my on-off button on my remote does, so that this actually picks it up and toggles the maintenance mode. And then this one, of course, switches from green to red. Okay, so I think this is really interesting because that was a bit quick. Some thoughts on dependencies on devices, services, and Drupal in general. That the Drupal side doesn't really care about who listens to this key it's posting. It just it's given the responsibility of just throwing a key out there. And the Node.js backend doesn't really care where that Redis publish came from. It could be like from the command line or whatever. And the Arduino does not really care if the data it receives come from Drupal or something else. It just receives the message that it should, post the infrared signal, and the Tesla microcontroller here doesn't really care if the signal came from this Arduino or from my remote. It just knows that, okay, this means I should toggle the maintenance mode. And then, in turn, the toggle maintenance mode endpoint doesn't really care if it's a curl command or if it's this device that sends it. So I think this is really interesting, and I think this is maybe a communication pattern that when you want to make things work together, just don't make them dependent on each other. Or worse, like everything in one. It has a responsibility to do everything. So 6 demo, if this works, I'm gonna buy myself a beer later.
And if it doesn't work?
I'm gonna buy myself 2 beers. Okay. Now, I want everyone to be really silent now. Post a picture of a cat. See the counter? Okay, so what happened? We'll see the front page. It's a picture of a cat. Okay, that was fun. Let's do it again. Post a picture of a cat.
What if you tell it to post a picture of a dog?
Ah, clever. No, it's the same one. It's actually a random one, so I was hoping it would be another funny one. Sorry about that. Okay, so if you have been paying attention, like Kevin, you probably know what's coming. Post a picture of a dog. It's offline. You can clap now, that's fine. It's in maintenance mode.
Why did it go into maintenance?
So what happens here, right? Something aliens, probably. Thought control, actually. I just had to say it out loud so you would understand, the gist of it. So it was really thought control.
What's the second line?
This is a thing recording, and upon silence is doing voice analysis of the last recording. In this case, the thing is actually my computer, but it could have been another Raspberry Pi, for example. And if the word cat or dog is found, posts using core modules, actually, to the entity endpoint for a file entity, posts a file entity, and then when it has created this file entity, it posts a node entity via the REST module, and it attaches the file that it just created. And the node then gets a title based on the keyword, for example, a picture of a dog. And then, of course, this cycle starts if it has a dog in the title, IR signal, toggle maintenance mode, turn off red, whatever, yeah. So, and this uses also the core authentication basic out module as in core. It does not interfere at all with the regular user sessions, so it doesn't get logged out. And will, in theory, only provide access to a REST resource if compromised, although if you're like half of a hacker, you probably will figure out everything if you see a basic out header, but still, that just highlights the importance of using HTTPS. So that was the last demo. 6 out of 6, wow. So takeaways: always use HTTPS. You can use different strategies for using Internet of Things with Drupal, both in terms of authentication and security, and patterns for communicating. And Drupal 8 is awesome is a takeaway, and use HTTPS. I think I mentioned that. And also, Erik is not very good at soldering is a key takeaway. And of course, this upcoming GIF is a takeaway, which will be the last one. And I think, since I'm in like the philosophical corner, I think this, symbolizes that we all go out and do awesome things, and maybe things doesn't work out, but maybe something else awesome will happen, and the sun is shining and skateboard. Yeah, I mean, you think you would crash, but maybe things turn out okay, and the sun is shining, and yeah. Okay, so thanks. Question? None.
How much cost did you create this setup?
Well, I already had these things. Of course, I also got a couple of things from you, so that's for free. Yeah. Yeah, so that's it. All the code I have used are, of course, online, and you can play with it if you want. And also, there's one thing that is not in core yet, to post base64 encoded data for file entities in the REST module. It needs review right now, actually. So if anyone wants to review my patch tomorrow at the sprint, that would be awesome.
Have you tried the services module, the alpha one that was released?
It's for Drupal 8?
Yeah.
Okay, no.
Because I've been told that the REST module in core doesn't have a long and prosperous future.
Really? Okay. No, I didn't try it out.
looked at either code base.
No. No, but it was pretty obvious that I couldn't use the file part of it right out of the box, at least. So, but almost. So, yeah. And of course, for this demo, I specifically wanted to use only the core part of it. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.